The Kethran Dominion owned the stars. For 300 years, their giant warships had crushed every enemy they found. 47 star systems bent their knee to the alien empire. No one had ever beaten them in battle. Admiral Vex Tar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Might. The massive ship stretched 3 kilometers from nose to tail. Thousands of plasma cannons covered its dark hull like deadly spines. Energy shields wrapped around the vessel like invisible armor. Nothing could touch it. Nothing could stop it. The admiral was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like old leather. His 4 eyes glowed red in the dim light of the bridge. Sharp teeth filled his mouth when he smiled, which he did often these days. The galaxy belonged to him and his people. Admiral, called his second-in-command, Commander Zaltek, we have reached the human mining world. The creatures are waiting for our answer. Vexitar laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Let them wait. These humans think they can refuse our tribute demands. They will learn better. The mining colony on Kepler 442b had been foolish. When Kethran ships arrived 3 days ago, the colonists had said no to their demands. They wanted to keep their precious metals for themselves. Such stupidity amazed Vextar. Did they not know who they were dealing with? 12 heavy cruisers floated around the flagship like wolves around their pack leader. Each cruiser was half a kilometer long and armed with enough firepower to crack a moon. Together, they formed the most feared battle group in the galaxy. Sir, another officer reported, we are picking up a transmission. A human ship is coming. Vextar turned his attention to the scanner display. A small dot moved toward them through space. The computer identified it as an exploration vessel called the Wanderer. The admiral studied the data and started laughing. Again. One ship? He asked. One tiny ship thinks it can challenge us? The human vessel was pathetic. It measured only 200 meters long, barely larger than a Kethran shuttle. The scanners showed minimal weapons and weak shields, 30 crew members at most. It was like a mouse challenging a dragon. Shall we destroy it now, Admiral? Commander, Zeltek asked. Not yet, Vextar replied. Let it come closer. I want them to see our power before they die. It will make their fear taste sweeter. On the Wanderer, Captain Jake Miller sat in his command chair and studied the enemy fleet on his screen. His hands were steady, but sweat beaded on his forehead. He had known this day might come when he chose to answer the colony's distress call. Miller was 42 years old, with brown hair going gray at the temples. He had served in Earth's small space navy for 20 years before taking command of this exploration ship. The Wanderer was his first and probably last command. Today, it might become his tomb. Captain, said Engineer Lisa Parks from her station, I'm reading massive energy signatures from those ships. Their weapons could vaporize us with a single shot. Lisa was young, only 28, with short blonde hair and bright blue eyes. She was the smartest person Miller had ever met, able to understand alien technology that baffled other humans. If anyone could find a way out of this mess, it would be her. How long until we reach their position? Miller asked. Navigator Tom. Hudson checked his instruments. 4 hours, sir. Maybe less if we push the engines. Tom was a quiet man in his 30s with dark skin and careful eyes. He had guided the Wanderer through more dangerous situations than Miller could count. Asteroid fields, solar storms, and space anomalies all looked the same to Tom. Just another puzzle to solve. Communications Officer Amy Carter looked up from her panel. Sir, the colonists are asking for updates. They're scared. Amy was the youngest, crew member at 25, with red hair and freckles that made her look even younger. She had a gift for languages and had learned to speak with dozens of alien species. Her voice was steady, but Miller could see the worry in her green eyes. Tell them we're coming, Miller said. Tell them to hang on a little longer. He turned back to the main screen, where the Kethran fleet waited like a pack of predators. Every tactical manual said this was suicide. The smart thing would be to turn around and run. Call for help from Earth's main fleet even though they were months away. Let someone else fight this battle. But Miller had read the colony's messages. Families lived down there. children who had never seen Earth but called themselves human. The Kethrans would enslave them all if no one stood up to fight. "Lisa," he said, "I need you to analyze everything we know about Kethran ships, every sensor reading, every intelligence report. Find me something we can use." "Sir, their technology is centuries ahead of ours," Lisa replied. "Their shields alone. I know the odds," Miller cut her off. "But there has to be something." "No, design is perfect." Lisa nodded and bent over her computer. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she pulled up files and data streams. The rest of the bridge crew watched her work, hoping for a miracle. Miller had studied the Kethrans for years. They were proud, arrogant, and absolutely convinced of their superiority. They had beaten every enemy through raw power and overwhelming force. Their ships were built like fortresses, designed to smash through any defense. But Miller had noticed something in the old battle reports. The Kethrans always fought the same way. They relied on their technology and never adapted to new situations. They were like a hammer that saw every problem as a nail. Maybe that was their weakness. "Tom," Miller said, "plot us a course straight for their flagship. No evasive maneuvers." "Sir?" Tom looked confused. "That's suicide." "Maybe," Miller replied. "Or maybe it's exactly what they won't expect." The Wanderer flew onward through the dark space between stars, carrying 30 humans toward a battle they could not win. But sometimes, Miller thought, the impossible just needed the right push. The Wanderer dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler system. Captain Miller felt his stomach lurch as the ship returned to normal space. Through the main screen, he could see the Kethran fleet spread out like a wall of death. The 12 cruisers formed a perfect circle around their flagship. Each alien ship glowed with the blue light of active energy shields. Weapon ports along their hulls tracked the small human vessel as it approached. At the center of the formation, the Eternal Might waited like a sleeping giant. "They're hailing us," Amy Carter reported from her communication station. "Put them through," Miller ordered. The main screen flickered and showed Admiral Vextar's face. The alien's 4 red eyes stared at Miller with what looked like amusement. When Vextar spoke, his voice sounded like grinding metal. "I am Admiral Vextar of the Kethran Dominion," the alien said. "You command this pathetic vessel?" Miller stood up from his chair. "Captain Jake Miller of the Earthship Wanderer. We're here to discuss the situation with the mining colony." Vextar's mouth opened in what Miller realized was laughter. The sound made his skin crawl. "Discuss? You think you can negotiate with me?" "I'm asking for safe passage for the colonists," Miller said. "In exchange, we'll surrender ourselves to you." The alien admiral's laughter grew louder. "You offer me nothing I cannot take by force, but your courage amuses me. I will give you a demonstration of our power before you die." The screen switched to an outside view. One of the Kethran cruisers turned away from the formation and aimed at a small moon orbiting the colony world. A bright green beam shot from the ship's main gun. The moon simply vanished in a flash of light and debris. "That could have been your ship," Vextar said as his face returned to the screen. "Or the colony below. Consider it a gift of mercy." Miller felt his crew tense around him. The casual destruction of an entire moon showed the gap between human and Kethran technology. But he had expected this. Fear was a weapon the aliens used as much as their plasma cannons. "Impressive," Miller said calmly. "Now let me show you something." He cut the transmission and turned to his crew. "Lisa, what did your analysis find?" Engineer Lisa Parks looked up from her computer. Her face was pale but determined. "Their ships are networked together, sir. Every vessel shares targeting data through a central command system. It makes them incredibly coordinated. And incredibly vulnerable," Miller added. "Tom, begin evasive pattern Delta 7. Navigator." Tom Hudson's hands moved over his controls. The Wanderer suddenly lurched to the right, then dove down toward the planet's surface. The ship's movements looked random and chaotic. On the Eternal Might's bridge, Commander Zalthek watched the human ship's erratic course. "What are they doing? This makes no tactical sense." Admiral Vextar studied the display with growing irritation. They are frightened. Fear makes creatures act without reason. Destroy them. The nearest Kethran cruiser fired its main weapons. Brilliant beams of energy lanced through space where the Wanderer had been a second before. But the human ship had already moved, following a pattern that seemed to make no sense. They missed? Zaltek asked in surprise. Fire again? Vextar ordered. More beams shot through space. The Wanderer spun and twisted like a leaf in a hurricane. Every shot missed by meters or even kilometers. The small ship seemed to dance between the incoming fire. Miller gripped his command chair as the ship shook from near misses. How are we doing, Tom? Pattern Delta 7 is working, sir, Tom replied through gritted teeth. The computer analysis was right. Their targeting systems expect us to fly like they do. The Kethrans had built their ships for massive fleet battles. Their weapons were designed to hit other large vessels that moved in straight lines and fought with honor. A small ship that refused to follow the rules confused their targeting computers. Lisa, deploy the probe, Miller ordered. Probe away, sir, Lisa confirmed. A tiny device shot out from the Wanderer's hull. It was no bigger than a coffee cup, built from spare parts and human ingenuity. The probe flew straight toward one of the Kethran cruisers, too small for their weapons to target. What is that thing? Admiral Vextar demanded as he watched the probe approach his ships. Unknown, sir, his weapons officer replied. It appears to be some kind of sensor device. The probe made contact with the cruiser's communication array and attached itself like a tiny parasite. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Lisa Parks smiled. Connection established, she reported. The virus is uploading. On her computer screen, lines of code flowed like digital water. The virus was her masterpiece, designed specifically to attack Kethran systems. It was not meant to destroy their ships, but to do something much more clever. The Kethrans used quantum encryption for their communications, a system so advanced that human computers could not break it. But Lisa had studied chaos theory in college. She understood that even the most complex systems had patterns. The virus did not try to break the encryption. Instead, it introduced tiny random errors into the targeting calculations. How long until it takes effect? Miller asked. Already working, sir, Lisa replied. But the changes will be small at first, just tiny mistakes in their aim. Admiral Vexitar was losing patience. All ships concentrate fire on that human vessel. I want it destroyed now. The entire Kethran fleet turned their weapons on the Wanderer. Dozens of energy beams filled space. With deadly light, Miller felt the ship shake as shots passed close enough to overload their shields. Amy, get me an open channel to the colony, he ordered. Channel open, sir, Amy reported. This is Captain Miller, he said into his microphone. Begin evacuation procedures. Get everyone to the underground shelters. This is going to get messy. On the planet below, the human colonists watched the battle through telescopes and sensor arrays. They could see the tiny dot of the Wanderer surrounded by the blazing fury of the alien fleet. It looked impossible that the small ship could survive. But somehow it did. The Wanderer continued its wild dance through space, dodging death by impossibly small margins. The ship's hull was blackened by heat from near misses, but it kept flying. Sir, Tom Hudson called out, I'm reading system failures on the lead cruiser. Their targeting array is showing error messages. Miller allowed himself a small smile. The virus is spreading. How long until we can move to phase 2? 5 more minutes, sir, Lisa replied. We need the errors to build up in their network. 5 minutes felt like forever as the Wanderer continued to dodge the alien barrage. But Miller had faith in his crew and their plan. Sometimes the smallest actions could topple the mightiest enemies. Today, 30 humans would prove that size did not always matter. The dance of death continued in the dark space above Kepler 442b. The virus worked like poison in the Kethran network. At first, the errors were so small that no one noticed. A targeting computer would miss by 1 degree instead of hitting perfectly. A shield generator would flicker for half a second. Tiny mistakes that meant nothing by themselves. But Lisa Parks had designed her creation to grow. Each small error created 2 more errors. Those errors created 4 more. Soon, the problems would multiply faster than the alien computers could fix them. Sir, I'm reading strange energy fluctuations from the enemy ships, Tom Hudson reported from his navigation station. Captain Miller watched the tactical display as the Kethran cruisers continued their attack. The alien ships still moved in perfect formation, but something was different. Their weapons fire was becoming less accurate with each passing minute. The virus is spreading through their network, Lisa explained from her engineering station. Every time they share targeting data, they also share the corrupted information. It's like a disease that gets worse as it spreads. Admiral Vextar stood on his bridge and watched the battle with growing frustration. His fleet had been firing at the human ship for 20 minutes, but the tiny vessel continued to evade their attacks. How was this possible? Commander Zaltek, he called to his second-in-command. Why have we not destroyed this pest? Zaltek studied the tactical readouts with confusion. Sir, our targeting systems are operating within normal parameters, but our accuracy has decreased by 12% in the last 10 minutes. 12%? Vextar's 4 eyes blazed with anger. That is unacceptable. Run a full diagnostic on all weapon systems. Already in progress, sir, the weapons officer reported. But the diagnostic shows no problems. Everything appears to be functioning correctly. This was the beauty of Lisa's virus. It did not break the Kethran systems. Instead, it made them work incorrectly in ways that were almost impossible to detect. The alien computers thought they were operating perfectly, but tiny errors crept into every calculation. On the Wanderer, Miller felt the ship shake as another plasma beam passed, close to their hull. The shields were holding, but just barely. He could smell smoke from overloaded circuits. Amy, how are the colonists doing? He asked. Communications officer Amy Carter checked her instruments. Most families have reached the underground shelters, sir, but they're asking how much longer we can hold out. Miller did not answer immediately. The truth was that he did not know. The Wanderer was faster and more maneuverable than the alien ships, but it could not run forever. Eventually, their luck would run out. Lisa, can we increase the virus's spread rate? He asked. I'm trying, sir, Lisa replied, her fingers flying over her keyboard. But I need to be careful. If I push too hard, their security systems might detect the intrusion. The engineer was walking a tightrope. She needed the virus to spread quickly enough to help them win the battle, but slowly enough to avoid detection. It was like performing surgery while riding a bucking horse. Another plasma beam shot past the Wanderer's nose, close enough to light up the bridge with green fire. Tom Hudson pulled the ship into a spinning dive that made everyone's stomach lurch. Sir, Tom called out, I'm seeing coordination problems in their formation. Ship 3 and Ship 7 nearly collided just now. Miller looked at the tactical display and smiled grimly. The virus was doing more than just affecting weapon accuracy. It was causing errors in navigation and formation flying as well. The perfect Kethran battle line was beginning to crack. Admiral Vextar noticed the same thing. What is happening to our formation? He demanded. Unknown, sir, Commander Zaltek replied. Our ships are reporting minor navigation errors. Nothing serious, but enough to disrupt our standard patterns. Minor errors? Vextar's voice rose to a roar. There are no minor errors in the Kethran fleet. Find the source of this problem and fix it immediately. But the problem was not something they could fix easily. The virus had infected their most basic systems, the quantum computers that controlled everything from weapons to life support. It was like trying to remove poison from someone's bloodstream with bare hands. On her computer screen, Lisa watched the virus spread through the enemy network like digital wildfire. Each infected system passed the corruption to others, creating an exponential growth pattern that would soon overwhelm the Kethran defenses. Captain, she said excitedly, the virus has reached their flagship. I'm seeing error cascades throughout their primary systems. Miller felt a surge of hope. If they could disable the command ship, the rest of the fleet might lose coordination entirely. But they needed to act fast. The Kethrans were not stupid. Soon they would realize that something was attacking their computers. Tom, plot a course directly through their formation, Miller ordered. We're going to thread the needle. Sir, that's suicide, Tom protested. There's no way through that much firepower. There is if they can't aim properly, Miller replied. Lisa, I need maximum virus activity in the next 5 minutes, whatever it takes. Lisa nodded and began typing commands into her computer. Warning messages flashed on her screen as she pushed the virus beyond its safe parameters. But desperate times called for desperate measures. The change was immediate and dramatic. On 3 different Kethrin cruisers, weapon systems began firing at random targets. One ship's plasma cannon locked onto empty space and would not stop firing. Another cruiser's shields flickered on and off like a broken light bulb. What is happening? Admiral Vextar screamed at his crew. Why are our ships malfunctioning? Sir, we are detecting some kind of computer intrusion, the security officer reported. It appears to be a virus of unknown origin. A virus? Vextar's face twisted with rage. How is that possible? Our quantum encryption is unbreakable. The virus does not seem to be breaking our encryption, sir, the officer explained nervously. Instead, it is introducing random errors into our calculations. Very small errors that compound over time. For the first time in 300 years, Admiral Vextar felt something he had almost forgotten. Fear. Not fear of death or defeat, but fear of the unknown. How could these primitive humans create something that his advanced civilization could not stop? The Wanderer began its run through the Kethrin formation. Tom Hudson flew the ship like a man possessed, weaving between the massive alien vessels as they fired wildly in all directions. Plasma beams crossed and recrossed in space, creating a deadly light show that lit up the darkness. One beam passed so close to the Wanderer that it melted part of the hull plating. Another shot went wide and struck a Kethrin cruiser instead, causing significant damage to its shield generators. Friendly fire incident on Cruiser 7. Commander Zalthek reported in disbelief. Their targeting system locked onto us instead of the human ship. The impossible was happening. The mighty Kethrin fleet was being torn apart not by enemy weapons, but by its own confused computers. The virus had turned their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. The Kethrin fleet was falling apart. 3 cruisers had already destroyed each other with misdirected fire. Another ship spun helplessly through space, its navigation systems completely confused by the virus. What had started as a perfect battle formation now looked like a chaotic mess of burning metal. Admiral Vextar watched his command fall to pieces around him. The virus had spread through every system on every ship. Weapons fired at random. Shields failed without warning. Even the artificial gravity on some vessels had begun to fluctuate wildly. Sir, we must retreat, Commander Zalthek urged. We need time to purge our systems and analyze this threat. No. Vextar slammed his fist on the command console. I will not be defeated by a single human ship. All remaining vessels concentrate fire on the Eternal Might's position. We will use ourselves as bait. It was a desperate plan born of wounded pride. Vextar intended to lure the human ship close to his flagship, then destroy it with the Eternal Might's massive guns. But the Admiral did not realize that his own ship was already infected with the same virus that had crippled his fleet. Captain Miller saw the alien ships moving into position around the massive flagship. It was exactly what he had hoped for. The more ships that networked together, the faster the virus would spread and the worse the errors would become. Lisa, what's our status on the virus? He asked. Engineer Lisa Parks looked up from her computer with exhaustion in her eyes. She had been fighting a digital battle for over an hour, constantly adjusting the virus to stay ahead of Kethrin security measures. The flagship's main computers are heavily infected, sir, she reported. But their backup systems are still clean. If they switch to manual control, we'll lose our advantage. Then we need to hit them before they figure that out, Miller decided. Tom, take us straight at the Eternal Might, full speed. Navigator Tom Hudson stared at his captain in shock. Sir, that ship has enough firepower to destroy a small planet. Even with the virus, it's still incredibly dangerous. I know, Miller replied calmly, but it's also our only chance. Amy, send a message to the colony. Tell them to prepare for emergency evacuation if this goes wrong. Communications Officer Amy Carter's hands shook as she sent the message. Everyone on the bridge knew they were about to attempt something that had never been tried before. A tiny exploration ship was going to ram the largest warship in the galaxy. The Wanderer accelerated toward the Eternal Might like a bullet fired from a gun. The flagship's weapons began to track the approaching vessel, but the targeting systems were confused by the virus. Green plasma beams shot past the human ship, missing by kilometers instead of meters. "Impossible," Admiral Vextar muttered as he watched his ship's weapons fail to hit their target. "How can they be so inaccurate at this range?" "Sir, the virus has infected our primary targeting array," his weapons officer reported with panic in his voice. "I'm switching to backup systems now." But it was too late. The Wanderer was already too close for the massive guns to track properly. The ship's small size and incredible speed made it nearly impossible to hit, even with working computers. Tom Hudson flew the ship through a field of debris from the destroyed cruisers. Chunks of alien metal the size of buildings spun through space around them. He used the wreckage as cover, hiding the Wanderer's approach until the last possible moment. "Lisa, I need everything you can give me," Miller ordered. "Divert all power to the fusion ram." The fusion ram was not a weapon. It was a mining tool designed to break apart asteroids for ore extraction. But Lisa had modified it with spare parts and human creativity. Instead of a controlled beam for mining, it would create an uncontrolled explosion on impact. "Power at maximum, sir," Lisa reported. "But I should warn you, this will probably destroy our ship too." Miller nodded grimly. He had known from the beginning that this might be a one-way mission. But if they could stop the Kethrins here, it would save thousands of human lives on other worlds. The Wanderer burst from the debris field like a diving hawk. The eternal might filled their entire view screen, a wall of dark metal and glowing weapon ports. For a moment, everyone on the bridge was silent in the face of such overwhelming size. "Amy, open a channel to all ships," Miller commanded. "Channel. Open, sir," Amy replied. Miller spoke calmly into his microphone, his words broadcast to every Kethrin vessel in the system. "This is Captain Jake Miller of the Earthship Wanderer. You came here thinking you were untouchable. Today you learn that no one is untouchable, no one is unbeatable, and no one enslaves humans without a fight." Admiral Vexitar heard the transmission and laughed bitterly. Brave words from a dead man. But courage cannot stop physics. Your small ship cannot harm the eternal might. He was wrong. The Wanderer struck the flagship's command section like a meteor hitting a mountain. The fusion ram exploded on impact, tearing through layers of armor and shield generators. The blast was not large enough to destroy the massive ship, but it was perfectly placed to cripple its most important systems. The Eternal Might's bridge went dark as power systems failed throughout the command section. Admiral Vextar was thrown to the floor as artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Around him, his crew struggled with sparking control panels and failing life support. "Damage report," Vextar shouted over the noise of alarms and emergency systems. "Command and control systems are offline." Commander Zalthik reported with a shaking voice. "We've lost communication with the fleet. Navigation is down, weapons are down, we're essentially dead in space." The remaining Kethrin cruisers found themselves without leadership or coordination. Some tried to continue the attack, but their virus-infected systems made them more dangerous to each other than to any enemy. Others began to retreat, unwilling to fight without their admiral's guidance. From the wreckage of the collision, a single escape pod shot away from the impact site. Inside, Captain Miller and his crew were bruised but alive. The Wanderer was gone, sacrificed to prove a point that would echo across the galaxy. "Did we win?" Amy Carter asked weakly. Miller looked through the pod's small window at the crippled Kethrin flagship and the retreating alien fleet. "We won," he confirmed. "We actually won. The Battle of Kepler 442b was over. For the first time in 300 years, the Kethrin Dominion had been defeated. News of the impossible victory would spread to every corner of the galaxy within days. The aliens who had seemed untouchable had been brought low by 30 humans, in a ship barely larger than a shuttle. But more importantly, the galaxy had learned something new about humanity. They would not bow down. They would not surrender. And they would never, ever give up. The age of unchallenged alien domination was ending. A new chapter in galactic history had begun.